It was just a month ago now that I led a solidarity delegation to Palestine. We were invited by our Palestinian siblings to come and see so that we might return home and tell. That's what I'm here to do today, so thank you for having me. As I returned home, the line between there and here, it already feels very, very thin. In Palestine, I witnessed violence, military apartheid occupation, and ethnic cleansing firsthand. For Palestinians, they say death either comes instantly or very slowly. Death by 1,000 little paper cuts. And this was a reality twice now. I have seen and I have felt in a small way and absorbed with my senses. I arrived this time in January to Palestine already grieving the deaths of Renee Good and a man you might not have heard of, but who is dear to me and others who are working outside of Delaney Hall Detention Center in Newark, New Jersey. His name is John Wilson Brutus, and he died suddenly in Delaney Hall, and there's been no account or explanation for his death. Then I came back home here to the U.S., carrying new grief from all that I saw and witnessed in Palestine and Israel, only then to witness on my phone, perhaps like some of you, Alex Preddy's murder in Minneapolis. This is the imperial boomerang come home. That's a technical way of describing the dynamic happening in our world right now. For over 2 decades, U.S. law enforcement, including ICE, they have trained with Israel Defense Forces. Like my solidarity delegation did, ICE agents traveled to occupied Palestine. But unlike our focus on truth and justice and nonviolent resistance, ICE met with Israeli military and police, visiting sites marked by Israel's worst human rights abuses against Palestinians. And so, is it no wonder then that ICE is mirroring the same tactics Israel uses against the Palestinian people? Checkpoints, disappearances, detentions without due process, chemical weapons, violence against civilians and medics. The tactics, they're the same. The rhetoric, it's the same. Oh, and then there's the funding. It's our tax dollars. It's the U.S. government. This would be enough to drive us into despair. But our Palestinian siblings, who have been enduring and resisting far longer than many of us, teach us otherwise. Despair is a luxury of the bourgeoisie. This was said by a Palestinian refugee in their own country. They were speaking inside of a Palestinian refugee camp where our delegation is taking a photo, not far from the land that their family was forced off of during the Nakba of 1948. One of the most remarkable parts of my 2 delegations to Palestine has been learning from Palestinian Christians whose faith reaches all the way back to Pentecost. They're called the first Christians. What a title. And they have been formed deep in their bones by the nonviolent ethics of Jesus, especially the Sermon on the Mount. The stories of Jesus that we learn in Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John have been passed down through their family lines for generations, taught by their grandmothers and their mothers, carried, as they say, since infancy alongside their mother's milk. How beautiful is that? One of these first Christians is a man named Omar Harami. Omar is an Arab, Palestinian, Jerusalemite, Greek Orthodox Christian. And his ancestors have been living in Palestine for thousands of years. Omar, as he is wont to tell us, was raised with his grandmother's stories about a charismatic rabbi who came to Jerusalem, challenged the authorities, healed the sick, liberated the oppressed, and preached the good news. Sounds familiar, right? And while Western Christians, we usually remember, at least during Christmas season, that Jesus was born in Bethlehem, and hopefully we remember that's Palestine, not PA. Sometimes we might forget that Jesus was both Jewish and Palestinian. And even more, we might forget that Jesus' own ministry of nonviolence, it emerged in response to state-sponsored violence. In the face of John the Baptist's arrest by the state, Jesus doesn't hide. Jesus starts his ministry in earnest. This is when Jesus starts calling ordinary workers. It's when he starts building a community of nonviolent resistors. All the while, he goes about teaching and healing and bringing a hope-filled message. And his message was very clear. The kingdom of heaven is at hand, and violence will not get the final word. To understand what it looks like to follow this nonviolent Palestinian Jewish Jesus in our U.S. context today, I think that we are desperately in need of the wisdom of the communities that have followed Jesus since his earliest days. So this morning, I invite us to focus on one particular beatitude that you heard read through the insight of a Palestinian Christian, so that we might hear it in a way that Western Christians and commentaries rarely have. Our guide will be Reverend Dr. Mitri Raheb. He is the most widely published Palestinian liberation theologian. He also happens to be a Lutheran pastor, and he's the founder and president of a wonderful university in Bethlehem called Dar al-Kalima, which we were able to visit. Next slide. The beatitude in focus is the one that our English translations interpret this way: "Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth." Now, Pastor Mitri Raheb highlights that this beatitude is often marginalized and it seldom receives much sustained attention. He wonders maybe it's because it would be harder to spiritualize than a few of the other Beatitudes. How interesting that this particular Beatitude is skipped over altogether in Luke's telling of the Beatitudes. When Jesus says that the meek shall inherit the earth, he's quoting from Psalm 37. That's what we read this morning. And you might have caught it. There was 5 different times. Those who wait for the Lord, the meek, those blessed by the Lord, the righteous, they will inherit the land. The meek shall inherit the land. And what happens, Raheb shows, is that when the words of Jesus were translated from Aramaic into Greek during the time of the early church, the word that means the land was changed to read in Greek, the earth. The meek shall inherit the land. Next slide. Looking around East Jerusalem and the West Bank, it was painfully clear that the Meek do not possess the land. Today, 66% of the West Bank is controlled by Israeli army and settlers, and there are new outposts, illegal outposts rising daily as Palestinians are being displaced from their land hour by hour. Last Sunday, Israel's Security Cabinet ratified a series of decisions to expand Israel's power across the occupied West Bank, making it easier for settlers to seize Palestinian land illegally. Now, they've been doing that, but what they're working on now is writing a law to make it easier and legal. Next slide. We saw this illegal land seizing up close as we visited the Bedouin Palestinian village of al-Khair in the South Hebron Hills of the West Bank. We went to meet members of the Hathalim family, one of 57 families who live in the village. And Omar, who I mentioned earlier, brought us to meet them intentionally, he said, because Palestinians come to learn from the Hathalim family and the villagers of al-Khair because of their tremendous resilience and steadfastness. And the word for that in Arabic is a beautiful word. I'd love to share it with you. Sumud. Can you say it? Sumud. It means steadfastness and resilience. Next slide. al-Khair residents, they are all refugees from the 1948 Nakba. That was this time when over 700,000 Palestinians were expelled from their land. Over 500 villages were destroyed. So these are refugees who went from one location, which is now Israel, into another location, which is now the West Bank. And they've been living there ever since. Now, the first illegal settlement activity around the village of al-Khair started back in 1980 when I was 1 year old. It started, as it always does, with a military outpost that then has settlements that grow over time. It starts with caravans, and then they do power lines and water, and then they have more caravans, and then they build homes. And now this settlement is called Carmel, and it's got hundreds of illegal settlers living there, right looking down on top of the villagers of al-Khair. Next slide. In recent years, the settler violence to the villages in the South Hebron Hills has escalated greatly, particularly after October 7th. There are daily, if not weekly, arbitrary arrests of Palestinians. Their children are tear gassed and attacked. 500 of their olive trees have been cut down. Their livestock has been stolen and killed, and their land has been confiscated. Nearly all their agriculture and grazing land has been taken from them. This is their livelihood. It is gone. Their herds have dwindled from 3,500 goats and sheep to fewer than 150. And even with that few left, the feed that they now have to buy in town instead of allowing their animals to graze on the land, the feed is so expensive for these farming families that they now often cannot afford the milk and the medicine that their children and families need. Their village has no electricity, and it receives water from Israel only 7 hours a week for 300 people in the village. It sounds like I'm making this up. These are the facts on the ground. Next slide. In 2007, demolitions began in El-Khair, and they've continued relentlessly since then. In 2025, last year, the settlers pushed even further, placing caravans, right, like all settlements start, placing new caravans right beside the Palestinian homes in El-Khair, right? So there's on the hill is the Carmel settlement, built up, real houses. Down the hill is the village of El-Khair. Very simple people, very simple homes. Now, the little bit of space that they're on, that they've been crammed into, now there's caravans around that space too. And so what's happened is El-Khair is now completely encircled. It's like an island inside of the illegal settlement. Their enemies are breathing down on them. Last summer, after weeks of escalating attacks, a notorious settler named Ynon Levy, who's been sanctioned by both the U.S. and the UE for repeated violence against Palestinians, Levy arrived at El-Khair with an excavator. He tore up water pipes, he uprooted trees. These were all sustaining the families of the village. When Ahmad Hathalin, remember the Hathalin family and their Samud, when he stepped in front of the machine, pleading in Arabic and English and Hebrew, Levy rammed him with the excavator's hammer, knocking him unconscious. Next slide. Is this the slide that has the three men? Then we're at the right spot. Great. So Ada Hathalin was Ahmad's cousin. Ahmad was the one hit by the excavator. Ada was a 31-year-old English teacher and respected organizer in the village. He had gained international recognition because he was in the Oscar-winning film No Other Land. And he was filming Levy nearby, right? Filming what was going on, what Levy was doing, which was illegal, when Levy opened fire and killed him as he's holding one of his three young sons. Ada left behind his wife and three small children who still ask for their father. The oldest child told his mother he wished he could pretend to be dead so the gods will take me to my dad. When our delegation was there in January at the village of El-Khair, we spoke to Ada's brother Khalil and another cousin, Eid. And they told us Israeli forces never arrested Levy. Instead, they listened to Levy's instructions and arrested 4 Palestinians and international supporters who were there trying to provide protective presence. Levy was held overnight and then released back to the community. Meanwhile, Ada's body was withheld from the family by Israeli authorities until the Samud of 70 village women ages 13 to 70 began a hunger strike to get Ada's body back for burial. Next slide. The day of our visit here in January, we ate a delicious Palestinian lunch in their community center. We played with the children of the community on their small playground and on their, at that point, unfinished soccer field. And everything that we saw and touched, every swing, every pipe, the simple bathrooms out back, every structure has a demolition order on it from Israel. Next slide. During our soccer game with the children, I hadn't played soccer since my youth, but I played it and had this beautiful time with the children. But while we're playing this game, remember the settler caravans have now encroached within just, 50 feet of where we're playing. A settler came out of the caravan to film us while we were playing. And when the soccer ball accidentally got kicked over the barbed wire fence surrounding the field, right? This is what happens when you play soccer. The soccer ball went to the land that is properly the land of the village of el-Khair, but has been encroached upon by the settlers, and the children were too afraid to retrieve the soccer ball, and our game stopped. Next slide. Does this show the green turf? So since our visit in January, the village of el-Khair, they've added green turf now, synthetic green turf for the children to play on, trying to finish out the crude soccer field, which they've now made as a memorial to Ada, who was killed, right, shot by Levi. Since they've done that, the Israeli settlers have placed the Israel flag all around the soccer field, not intimidating in the least. And there is now a demolition order from the Israeli military taped to the barbed wire of the soccer field, proclaiming that the land belongs to Israel. And even so, the people of el-Khair, they remain steadfast. Before he was killed, Ada said this. He says, "This is oppression. You should not give up. The results may take years and years. You must be patient. To live in el-Khair, you need two things: patience and hope. You cannot live without hope." Ada's cousin, Ahmad, the one who had been pleading in front of the excavator, Ahmad's take on it is that leaving now after so much sacrifice would be unthinkable. He says, "My grandparents were refugees from 1948, and they moved here. If I leave here, where am I going to go? We must honor those who died for this land. We have to be resilient, Samud. This is my country. This is my land. This is where I belong." Next slide. "Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the land." Pastor Mitri Raheb, he connects the steadfastness, the samud of el-Khair with Jesus's words. And he insists we cannot understand Jesus's beatitude if we limit our view to the current Israeli-U.S. settler colonial project. When Jesus says the meek shall inherit the land, Raheb says Jesus is speaking with a wide-angle lens. He's seen not decades, he's seen centuries. Jesus knew that the Palestinians had already endured empire after empire. Raheb lists them: the Assyrians, the Babylonians, the Persians, the Greeks, the Romans, followed centuries later by the Byzantines, the Arabs, the Crusaders, the Ayyubids, the Ottomans, the British, and now the Israeli occupation. And Raheb said, none lasted, all rose and fell. And so Raheb urges us not to mistake the power of any empire for permanence. He says Jesus wanted his people to know that Rome, with its checkpoints and settlements, would not endure, but that the poor and powerless, the meek, they would remain, and they will inherit the land. The meek shall inherit the land. This is not cheap hope. This is release from the power of empire the moment Jesus' words are believed. The villagers of el-Khair, they are the living embodiment of the steadfastness, the samud, that refuses to be overcome by empire. I think they know Israel will not last, but the meek will, and they will inherit the land. And final slide. So friends, I think that you and I think we too, I think we need to be released from the power of the empire over our bodies, over our hearts, over our minds. I think we need to hear the good news for ourselves. The U.S. empire, just like all the others, will not last forever. So we can take heart. We can take heart at Jesus' words, the kingdom of God has drawn near. And like the Hathaline family and all those in the village of El-Khair and all throughout Palestine, we are being called to join the meek in steadfast hope, in courageous resistance and unflinching patience. For the meek shall inherit the land. Thanks be to God. Amen and amen.